coming up next on the stage here, get ready. We're about to meet Plenary 5, which will be the last sessions for today as well. So by the time meeting here, I just want to inform everyone that if you log on to our website, not only that you can watch our live sessions on there, we also have the virtual exhibition as well. And very important, we would kindly like to ask for your cooperation. We have a survey form on the website itself. So just a few minutes, quick drop by at the survey form and then complete it for us. We love to hear from you. Any comments that you would like to share for all of us so that we can improve in the future for our live conference in the next time as well. And apart from that, just to remind everyone that we also have an e-certificate for those that have done the 3 criteria as follows that we mentioned earlier. So one more time, remind you that first is that if you have attended the opening ceremony and the special lecture from Her Royal Highness Princess online, you also would be qualified for the e-certificate. And 2 is you have to attend our online conference for the plenary sessions and the parallel session, the subgroup conference, at least 1 topic per day. And last one is that we need to hear from you. If you have shared your comments and questions, and from at least once in a day, if you have done all 3, then you will be certified to receive an e-certificate from us. Will be sent to you directly. And now, I guess that we're all ready for the last sessions for today that I've mentioned, Plenary 5, where we'll be talking about Way Forward, a message of hope and engagement for equitable education. So, may I please invite all of our speakers on the stage for the next sessions on Plenary 5. Well, just to remind everyone, once again, don't forget that we have a virtual exhibition on the website. We have the e-certificate as well. So what you need to do is, if you know yourself that you have been through all the 3 criteria, as I informed you earlier, first, if you already attend in the opening ceremony and lecture from Her Royal Highness Princess, that is 1. Second, if you attend the online conference for plenary session and the subgroup conference, at least 1 topic per day. And last is you need to share your comments and your questions with us. If you have done all 3 of that, then you would receive an e-certificate from us as well. Not only that, just to remind everyone about the survey form where you can log on to our website. We would love to hear from you. Any comments that you would like to share with us in the future so that we could improve our live conference. So as you can see that this is the first largest live conference here, and of course in Asia as well, for the International Conference on Equitable Education, all for education. It's a 2-day of full conference that we have provided varieties of topics to engage in all of that as well. So after this, if you missed yesterday's topic, both for the plenary sessions or the subgroup conference as well, don't worry, because videos would be uploaded on the website. So you can just log on to the website and then come back and replay the video, as many as you like. And for those that would like to join, it's a free submissions, free registration. You just need to registration first, and then you have your username and password to log on to the website, and then you can replay all the videos from yesterday's, which is the first day, and for today as well. After this event is over, you can come back as many as you like and then replay all the videos as well. So this is a good thing about live conference, is that you can always come back to the videos and watch particular topic that you are interested, as many as you like, and you can also download the handovers and the documents on our 2 days conference online from our website as well. So very welcome to all of our distinguished speakers that are coming on up on stage here. This is our highlight of the day as well for Plenary 5, which is a live sessions, and we'll have all of our moderators and speakers up here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Way Forward, a message of hope and engagement for equitable education. Please.
Yes. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome you to Plenary 5, which is the last plenary of this very first international conference on equitable education, all for education. So for today, we have 4 representatives from the organizing partners join us in this very special plenary, and this plenary is called Way Forward, a message of hope and engagement on equitable education. And during the last 2 days, as you have heard, or I'm sure many of you have joined us since yesterday from the opening, and we're very happy to inform the participant at home that today the top hit is 2,500 views from 79 countries all over the world. Very good. So it's a record-breaking, very first international, and we're able to get the viewer like this. It's very remarkable, and I would say it's a very gutsy thing to do for us. So, but what have we done so far in terms of our international conference that we have come together, and how do we go from here? And for this session is intended to have key organizing partners to convey the message and to tell us what are their hope and how their organization will engage in equitable education. I would like to first start introducing Kun Durya Amata Viwat Naka. Kun Durya she wears several important hats. Kun Durya is the Secretary General of the Thai National Commission for UNESCO, and at the same time she is also the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education. So Kun Durya, may I invite you to the podium to share with us what have we received as the key message of this international conference.
Well, first I would like to congratulate the organizer for such 1,000 views online, and this is the remarkable number for the international conference like this. And that is also my privilege to be here standing in front of all of you and be part of this significant forum where noble scholars, eminent civil societies, and active alliance in education have been sharing valuable experiences in terms of innovative solutions, best practices, and lessons learned in promoting equitable education. So let me start by bringing all of you back to yesterday from the beginning of the conference. So I would like to share with all of you some essential substances of what we have been discussed and share during the 2-day conference. At the beginning, I think all of you have also witnessed that we receive a gracious honor of Her Royal Highness, Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn, to deliver special lecture on 40 years of promoting equity in education and improving quality of lives for the disadvantaged children and youth. The insightful presentation of Her Royal Highness has indicated that she has been involving in many educational development projects long before Jomtien Declaration was adopted in 1990. It also paved us the way to see that the royal activities and royal projects, many of them contribute to the development of education, and not only in Thailand, but also expand to some neighboring countries. And later we heard from the presentation of 2 global funds, namely Education Cannot Wait and Global Partnership for Education. And they presented good models for future work that could be some example for the Equitable Education Fund. And the two global funds share lessons learned, particularly challenges during the pandemic of COVID-19. We have witnessed progress in access to education during the past 30 years. However, there are many challenges that we still have to address and tackle. Before the pandemic of COVID-19, around 250 million children were not able to read and write, and around 200 million young people leave school without necessary skills that could help them earn their livings. The discussion on session 1, let me bring you to some highlights of the session 1, which is the equitable education and COVID-19. It is obvious that many speakers agree that the pandemic of virus corona is an unprecedented challenge that has had a high impact on education. And because of the pandemic, they believe that it might be likely that more children could be pushed out of education system. The pandemic causes 1.6 billion children to stay home for several months since February, and affects around 63 million teachers. School closures due to the pandemic will carry high social and economic costs for people across communities. The impact is particularly severe among most vulnerable and marginalized children and families. School closures due to COVID-19, of course, save lives of students and teachers, as well as those who work in education area. However, at the same time, it also widens education disparity. The pandemic is a trigger for us, therefore, as educators, to revisit and redefine innovative ways to overcome not only the challenges on access to quality education, but also how to enhance inclusive education and ensure that no one will be left behind. When schools are closed, learning was interrupted, of course, and deprived opportunities of youth for growth and development. And mostly, this will impact among the disadvantaged, because many of them experience poor nutrition, because most of them rely on school lunch program. And because they don't go to school, some of the kids don't have the good nutrition because they don't have good lunch. Changing from classroom-based learning to home-based learning has increased high demand for digital learning. When parents and teachers are not ready and well prepared. Infrastructure is also an obstacle for digital learning, where those who live in big cities easily access to digital learning, while families in the rural areas have difficulty in access to the infrastructure that could enable them to access digital learning. Some teachers have been well trained to use advanced technologies, while some parents have limited capability to facilitate the learning of their children. Moreover, the learning materials for distance learning have not been well prepared and not adequate for the students to use. As for Thailand, it is fortunate for us that during the pandemic, it was the school vacation, and the reschedule of the opening of the school from mid of May to the 1st of July could enable us to have at least 1 month and 1.5 months to prepare for everything. During this period, we could train our teachers to be familiarized with the technologies for distance learning, develop adequate materials, and be prepared with new normal approach for education. The Ministry of Education has also worked with other agencies, both public and private sectors, to prepare necessary equipments for families to be ready for distance learning. Now I would like to move to what we highlight in session 2. Some practices related to the promotion of equitable education were discussed. Some countries have clear legislation that right to education is the basic right to ensure accessibility to education for everyone. Many speakers share common views that even though equitable education is not legalized, there are some good practices among the speakers showing that we can push forward equitable education in our society without legalized law. In many cases, equitable education is the heart of education reform as well as in Thailand, particularly when it comes to the vulnerable groups. It shows that strong leadership at school level could revitalize the engagement of teachers, parents, as well as the communities to mobilize collaboration in inclusive education. School leadership is also one of the key factors to support wider equitable education in the communities. Different countries have different methods that would suitably respond to their own context of equitable education. The highlight of investment in education is one of the key issues that we discussed a lot during this conference. We have always confirmed that investment in education is the most effective way in improving labor forces and could help elevate national economic growth. Innovative financing in education, therefore, is to raise additional funds to education investments and shows maximized use of the budget. As Kun Ishiro just mentioned during the previous session. Our speakers share some practices that could be effective ways of using the education budget to promote equitable education. The conditional cash transfer program is one of the most popular interventions in many countries to help poor families to return to school and reduce the number of out-of-school children and youth. Some incentives for education investment is also encouraged as a model to commit private sectors to contribute to equitable education. Partnership is another key issue that makes all of us meet in this conference. This is a good example. It is a global trend to focus on partnership, and it is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 17, where we believe that this goal is a complementary point to other 16 Sustainable Development Goals. Partnership between sectors and networks is a critical and demands for inclusive and equitable education for all. One of the success factors to promote equitable education is to engage and build partnerships between public and private sectors. Many speakers highlight the necessity of public-private partnership at all levels because it is almost impossible, especially in remote and challenging contexts. The world is moving so fast, and public sector alone cannot keep pace with emerging challenges, particularly in terms of the advancement of technologies. Private sector-driven programs such as the work of Disrupt Technology Venture supports the idea that social entrepreneurship, technologies, and innovation can play a key role in solving social and education problems. Various approaches are cited as good examples of public-private partnership at the national level. As for the case of Thailand, we also encourage private sector to contribute to education sector and open for more opportunity for them to provide more advices to the curriculum development in some areas where specific and advanced skills are needed and promote relevancy of education. This example does not contribute to promoting quality education, but also opening for more opportunities to students, especially in remote areas, to access to education relevant to their future jobs. Another key issue that I would like to mention in this conference is the youth involvement. We see from yesterday that youth play a critical role in terms of equitable education. Yesterday, youth from 13 countries shared their views on what they expect to see in terms of equitable education. Therefore, the role of youth in equitable education should not be forgotten and should be promoted. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we learned a lot from this conference, and I would like to point out that there are some key issues that we should continue to work to ensure that equitable education is promoted. Some of them are COVID-19 or future emerging similar situation and equitable education. How can we deal the equitable education when we have the situation like this? In case we do not have legal framework to commit ourselves in promoting equitable education, should there be some other collaborative approaches to address this issue? So these are some key challenges that we need to look forward. How we can mobilize joint efforts from various partners to address this issue? Should there be some flexible education delivery systems to outreach the vulnerable groups? Teacher development is also another key success to equitable education. So have we done enough to train our teacher to be sensitive enough to equitable education? So these kind of points, I would like to leave it to our alliance, to this conference. So in conclusion, I think that this conference has allowed us to share, learn, and exchange views in many issues, as I mentioned. We have a lot of experts, a lot of friends in education area. All of the presentations have allowed us to realize our visions on how to enrich our education development in support of achieving SDGs 4 especially. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all conclusion, which would be best systematic way to promote equitable education. But most important thing that we have from this conference is new networks, new friends, and new alliance, which I sincerely hope that we will be able to foster long-term collaboration that will be an active driving force for human development in the future. The conference outcomes from today's discussion would be valuable inputs to the next year Asia and the Pacific Regional Ministerial Conference on Education, which the Ministry of Education Thailand will host. Actually, we plan to have this conference in August this year, but because of the COVID pandemic, we reschedule this regional conference to next year, and hopefully it's going to be first half of next year. During that conference, which will be at the policy makers in the region, they will share the progress of SDGs 4 achievement and discuss possible ways to achieve the goals. So some of the inputs from this conference will be discussed during that conference too. And I'm sure that the ministerial conference next year is also another joint collaboration between UNESCO, Unicef, and the Ministry of Education of Thailand. On my final note, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Equitable Education Fund, the EEF, and all other partners, namely the Ministry of Education of Thailand, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Human Security and Social Development, UNESCO Bangkok, UNICEF, and Save the Children, and also all the staff members who have been working very hard during these few months. I'm sure that they have been working very hard, and this is what I would like to congratulate all of you for the success of this remarkable virtual international conference. So my gratitude also goes to all participants online from all over the country. Thank you for your kind attention to this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much ค่ะคุณดุริยานะคะ That was a very comprehensive synopsis of the key messages that we have received from the two-day conference. It's a powerful message that we can all take, and we can use this message to be a driving force for us in the future. So for the next presenter for us is a representative from Unicef Thailand. We would like to invite Mr. Thomas Darwin. Mr. Thomas is the representative of Unicef Thailand, and he will share with us and convey with us what is UNICEF hope on equitable education, and how will UNICEF Thailand respond or engage in all the key messages that came out from this international conference. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you very much. Sawadee krap. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Delighted to be here with all of you, both on site and online. It's a real pleasure to be here with partners from the Ministry of Education, the EEF, UNESCO, and so many of you across the room and across the globe. It's been quite an exciting 2 days and a very engaging conference, and it has indeed capped several months of planning. So I want to start by saying thank you and congratulations to the EEF and the Ministry of Education and all the partners for being able to pull such a remarkable conference together, and for, I think, really going much beyond our wildest dreams in terms of the reach and how many people are connected with us and connecting together online to this conference. I found it so inspiring to see the change makers coming in from Helsinki, the Philippines, from China to New York to Bangkok. And I understand we are having colleagues and partners connecting from all over the globe to really look at, engage around new and creative ways to drive and sustain equitable change. Let me share a few of the takeaways that we would take from these 2 days, and maybe some thoughts for the future. When we look at the various sessions of the conference and what the conference covered, it really tells a powerful story of the potential for change against a range of topics and challenges that have been discussed, including the importance of the legal and legislative frameworks to support equity in education, the use and the importance of the use of data to identify learning needs of disadvantaged groups, the need to ensuring access to qualified and empowered teachers, the necessity of systematically budgeting, planning, and monitoring equity. And to us, all of this comes into really a realization that all the good practices and lessons that we've heard tell us one message, is that inequalities in education are not inevitable. These inequalities are the results of policy choices that we have made, as governments, as a community of education, as societies, as community actors. And what it means to us is that these choices can be adjusted. We can alter the course of these policy decisions that we make together. We can learn. We can make them better. How do we do that? We do that by fostering an inclusive, action-oriented dialogue, such as this conference. We do that by becoming laser-focused around children that are not accessing schools, but even more importantly, around what do these children that access school learn? What are their learning outcomes? What do they walk away with as skills, as knowledge, as capacity to engage in their own future and the future of their families and their communities? We do that by changing our operating models, which are currently not delivering change at the pace that we need to meet this very ambitious challenge of the SDG 4 around education. We do that as education champions by embodying the urgency of change. And I want to really emphasize this, the urgency of change for the education systems and for ourselves. We need to acknowledge that we do not have all the answers. We need to become more proactive at seeking these answers and creating these communities, these networks that maybe tell us that some of the answers have already been co-created somewhere else. We need to be better at the knowledge management, at seeking and then operationalizing. We also need to open ourselves to wider and perhaps more novel types of partnerships to get these education outcomes that we need with academia, civil society partners, young people, and private sector partners. We need to fully embrace and indeed to champion new narratives that seek to disrupt ourselves to start with, but also the education system that we all want to support. Narratives, I believe, that should revolve around the notion of the requirement for transformational change, for systemic change in our education model. When we listen to young people, when we look at the pace of change, what we need is not changes at the margin of what we do. We need transformational at the heart of the system that we want to champion in order to create that education system that genuinely works for all, an education for all. Now, there's no doubt that the COVID pandemic is a global tragedy, and its impact has hurt us all. And unfortunately, as Kunduria said, it has and potentially will impact disproportionately those that are already most vulnerable, those that were already struggling, those that were already behind in their learning journeys. Yet, it also put an emphasis on a further inequalizer or a further engagement area for us, and that is the notion of the digital divide, which is reflected in both the differences in access to hardware, connectivity, and the right software, but also the huge shortfall of teachers and parents with the digital skills to maintain continuity of learning. COVID is going to impact the world. It's going to impact the societies, the economy. It's going to have significant negative impact, potentially long-term impact on job access and the type of employment that is available to young people to access. What it tells me, what it tells UNICEF, is that the need to invest in this generation's human capital has never been greater. If there was ever a once-in-a-generation opportunity to co-create for system change and for collective impact through education, it is right now. Going forward from a UNICEF perspective, we really want to put our effort around the notion of learning unlimited. And that is to support every child and every young person to access learning anywhere by connecting schools, connecting every child, connecting every young person to the internet as an opportunity to fast-track and to systematize their access to learning, and also scaling up world-class digital solutions which meet every child and every young person's unique learning needs and context. Many of the young people we talk to tell us education has not changed for 100 years. I think all of us would argue that's not completely true. Still, that's a perception that the education systems give to many of young people in the world. This is not just a Thailand-focused dialogue. It's the same classroom, it's the same way of teaching, it's the same kind of test at the end of the year. Many of these things are here. And yet, machine learning is here with us. Digital platforms have been creating. Some startups creating by 20-year-old are getting learning outcomes that are better in focused engagement than general learning systems at national level. Let us learn from this. Let us take this opportunity of that digital opportunity to actually fast-track this learning for all, to equalize access to education for all. It will not be easy, and it will require, again, a change in how we work together, in how we connect to young people, in how we take their ideas, in how we better understand what works for them. And it can't be all digital. I myself have young children, and we've gone through COVID together, and they actually went through distance learning. And we quickly realized that whilst we are clearly part of a community that is very, very gifted in terms of our connection to internet, great schools, teachers mostly ready for this, it was very visible to me as a parent that that was simply not enough for either of my children, that they needed that connection, that physical engagement, that connection with the teachers to engage around emotional intelligence, around collaborative work, around connecting with others in a way that is not just purely academic. So there's a number of challenges and areas for engagement, and I would maybe offer 5 areas that maybe could allow us to take the most of this digital engagement. The first one is we need to deliver clear roadmaps to connect all schools, including very remote ones, to internet, so that their students may have a chance to benefit from local and from global learning opportunities that is available to them, or that we will make available to them. This needs to happen tomorrow. There is no excuse for us not to connect schools. We have the resources, we have the knowledge, we have the know-how. We can do this if we come together. And together, as a global community, also bringing in partners, such as private sector partners, and making them co-owners of this challenge, not just contributor, but co-owners of the success, of the result. 2, we need to embrace the understanding that education is about academic learnings and learning outcomes, but also so much more. It's about fostering student ownership of their education, their voice, their empowerment, their organizational skills, their growth mindset, their mental health, their nutritional status, their social emotional skills. All of these are part of the adults that they will be tomorrow. All of these are assets that they will need to manage the challenges of tomorrow that, I think everybody agrees, are somewhat greater than our own generation. 3, we need to maximize the technology's potential to transform education, and that will require massive investment in our teachers. We have an incredible potential to make technology work for children, but also to work for teachers. It's not and will never replace teachers, but it can be an incredibly powerful tool for teachers to be better at their work, for teachers to focus on where their best added value lies, around that social connection, around that emotional intelligence, around that critical skills, around that analytical spirit. And many of the teachers of the world are not quite ready to take on that challenge. They're not quite ready to benefit from the digital skills. Let us invest in that in a way that we have not yet done before. 4, if we acknowledge that education also happens at home, we need to acknowledge that many of these homes in the world are not yet connected. They don't have a device. They don't have electricity sometimes. They don't have necessarily parents who are there at home, who are either educated enough to accompany their child's learning journey, or simply are not home because they're working long hours. How do we manage this? How do we make sure that we have different models of engagement for these children, and that we make sure that technology is an accelerator, but not an accelerator of the divide? It's an accelerator of the bridging of that divide. How do we connect these children? Last point, financing of education systems and budgets must be a core priority of a country's economic recovery plan. It cannot come second base or third base. It cannot be an afterthought. What we invest in today's children will define the success of a nation's economic recovery in very short term and mid-term. We need to make that the priority of the investment portfolio of the government. We firmly believe that how we leverage technology in education today has a potential to transform how the systems of education will be equitable in the future. In summary, we, as a world community, we are faced with an unprecedented challenge, which is the COVID crisis. And yet, I strongly believe that this challenge is, on the one hand, jeopardizing some success that we have been building for the last decade or the last couple of decades. But it also presents an opportunity, as never before, to make it so stark, the potential and the requirement, the necessity, the urgency to invest in new education systems, to prepare our young people to be tomorrow ready and to take on the challenges that tomorrow will offer. We want to look at it as an opportunity of a lifetime for us as education champions to drive this transformational change that the education systems in the world require us to drive, to bring that equitable systems of education and quality education for all. Let us be the change makers that the children need. Let us be the change makers that the world needs today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. Your message of hope and engagement truly inspiring, and the very clear message is urgency of change. Let us be the change. Now, that's the message from Unicef Thailand. For the next representative of key partners in this international organization, we would like to hear from UNESCO. And for UNESCO, we have Mr. Shigeru Aoyagi, who is the director of UNESCO Bangkok and also the Asia Pacific Regional Bureau for Education. And Mr. Shigeru will share with us his hope and his engagement of how UNESCO would support all the messages that come out from this international conference. The floor is yours, Mr. Shigeru.
Well, thank you so much. Let me congratulate first the EF and all the participants for their very successful discussion deliberations on how we can promote EEF. The UNESCO has been very happy working with the EEF since its foundation last year. And then it is a kind of the big kind of change of the education scenario in this region as well as in the world. Let me begin with the how COVID, the pandemic, gave the impact on education in the world and then in this region. Well, it is the many of you fully aware that it is very unthinkable and unprecedented impact on education. At peak point, at the beginning of April this year, as many as 91% of the students, or 1.6 billion the young children and students, were out of school. Their learning disrupted because of school closures, and it's really, really the big things, not only for the education sector, but the economic sector, health sector in the world. We were requested at the international level to provide an immediate response, and then we did. Along with UNICEF and other partners, we bring the kind of data and the statistics in the world about the impact of COVID-19 outbreaks. And also we bring some guidance and recommendations to the government. And also we brought some kind of operational actions that carried out by the Global Education Coalition to respond to COVID-19. The Global Coalition was created in March this year, And since then, expanded, and then brought the many partners from the government and the international agencies, including Unicef, World Bank, and also the private sectors. And it came now, we have around 130 partners. This is really the positive sign of working together. We discuss a lot about the power of the partnership. Her Highness the Princess Clinton yesterday mentioned and believes the power of partnership, which is really, really important. When we, UNESCO and international organizations and many educationists, NGOs, civil society are realized, we can do that. Well, we learned a lot from the COVID-19. The lesson learned mostly into two parts. One is education is a common good, like health and like the environment. So we have to promote education, strengthen education as a common good. That is a powerful lesson we learned from this very sad experience. The second lesson we learned is disparities, divides, which has been already there before the COVID became wider and became more serious. Actually, the COVID-19 exacerbates the divide gaps we've seen during the last 30 years. Those who have not became much more kind of the serious situation in terms of wealth, in terms of education, in terms of information and knowledge. So we know the flow of knowledge, flow of information, and flow of wealth should be more kind of transparent and visible. Otherwise, the current regime, which will allow such kind of impartial and then the serious kind of the impartial and serious, the invisible flow of kind of trends will be again exacerbated. So we've seen a lot of kind of the great development, as Kunduria said, during last 30 years. At the John 10 conference in 1990, we saw the 375 million students are out of school. At that time, we have the 5.5 billion people in the world. And in 2018, the number of out-of-school children reduced down to 258 million, where we had the larger population of 7 billion people. So it is great achievement. But nonetheless, the Global Education Report, as well as the SCAP, the SDG Progress Report, saying that we are not on track. And this conference, to me, is a kind of inspiring power to recognize or remind the people, if the current trend continues, we will never see the achievement of SDG 4. We are now in the starting point of the action for decade of SDGs. And this is really good coincidence. The EF organized the conference to promote equitable education for all. But again, we have to be serious to know that we are not on the track, and current and the conventional way of intervention in promoting education cannot work if we really achieve the education for all by 2030. This is a circumstances situation. So what is the challenge? What is now we have to do? We have to change, as Thomas said. We have to be change agent to transfer the more relevant, appropriate education provision to the future generation. We've seen still a lot of kind of the out-of-school children, as Ichiro showed the graph. Still the out-of-school children at primary level, persistent at around 10%. That is the last mile. How we can address the last mile? our colleague Sheldon Schaefer mentioned, it is a kind of political dilemma. If the education ministers use the money to make the richer much richer at higher education level, for example, or to address these last miles in a serious way. UNESCO set up the International Commission on the Futures of Education last year. And then they developed a lot of reflections on the futures of education. The COVID-19 gave us the opportunity again to reflect on what should be the futures of education. And recently, the Commission published a very interesting publication, which is called 9 Ideas for Public Action for the Education in a Post-COVID-19 World. And these 9 ideas is very much to do with the message we got from this conference. It's something around the policy framework, it's something around the funding, the budget, and it's something around the teacher empowerment and how we can involve more the vulnerable children. 9 ideas I'd like to introduce. One is they recommend to strengthen education as a common good. Number 2, they suggest to expand the definition of the right to education. We've seen a lot of good development around Right to Education Act. For example, India in 2009, they enacted the Right to Education Act, which incorporated much more types of disabilities, which included the learning disabilities, including the dyslexia. So that kind of trend is really, really now on the wave, but we have to push more to really reach the unreached. So the right to education should be promoted in the education framework and the planning and the policies. And number 3 is to value the teaching professions and their collaborations. Teachers are the asset of education. We've seen a lot of artificial intelligence involvement in the education sector, machine learning, but they cannot replace teachers and schools. That is one of the big messages the International Commission on the Futures of Education gave to us. Number 4, to promote youth and children's participation in every form of learning. Formal education, non-formal education, and informal education in the process of lifelong learning. Education opportunities should be provided everywhere, anytime, at the pace of the learners. So that is also the very important message for us towards the education after COVID-19. And the 5th, they suggested to protect the social spaces provided by schools. Again, school is not just a place to impart knowledge and information. It is a place to promote interactions between teachers and students and among students, which create a kind of sense of emotional and social-emotional learning. We have to promote within the mind of the students that respect for others, empathy, and also self-assessment. So these kind of social-emotional learning is really, really important, and it should be reflected in education policy and also the curriculum. And 6, to make free and open source technologies available to teachers and students. And 7, to ensure scientific literacy within the curriculum. And 8, to protect funding of education. And 9, to advance global solidarity to end current level of inequality. So these are 9 actions suggested by the Commission's International Commission of the Futures of Education, which is chaired by Her Excellency President of Ethiopia. And I was very happy to see the many key messages during the conference are very much related to these suggestions at the global level. As Kunduria mentioned, the UNESCO, UNICEF, Ministry of Thailand, the Ministry of Education Thailand will organize the Education Ministerial meeting next year. And I really wish to have one panel to reflect on the 10 key issues that brought up this conference and how we can address these issues. We have to go ahead and we have to put our agenda forward at regional higher level. And then I think that's gonna be a good opportunity for us to bring our thought and reflection to the minister level. And the UNESCO, as I said, has been very happy to working with the EEF from the very outset of its foundation. And this is a kind of my pride to work with them. Since June 10, we've tried to reach the unreached, but it's unfinished agenda, unfinished business. And again, if we cannot change the trend, we will never see the achievement, the results. And kind of natural, conventional way of intervention cannot work. That we all know. We have to change. For systematic institutional change, we need, as Thomas said, we have to see it. But for that, we have to create some kind of emotion, respect for the others, understanding differences, and learning each other within the mind of the students. That is important, the mandate of education. And UNESCO, we're very happy to work with EF, of course, UNICEF, and also the Ministry of Thailand and the Ministry of other countries to advance this noble issue of equitable education for all. Well, once again, I congratulate all of us on the wonderful reflections which will coming at the wider kind of the platform or the debate at the global level, and then we will be expecting all of you engage yourself and commit yourself to bringing our voice to the wider kind of the arena. I thank you very much and congratulations once again.
So thank you very much, Mr. Aoyagi. And that your 9 ideas that you share with us is very much aligned with the key messages earlier that Kunduriya mentioned that came out from this international conference. So it truly echoes and confirms that we know where the gaps are in terms of education for all, and we know what would be the direction we should go to fulfill the last 10 years to reach the last miles of those vulnerable children that we want to reach them. So thank you very much again for sharing with us UNESCO hope and the support. So now, last but not least, is one of the very prominent speaker of Thailand. And today he's representing 2 hats with us. In fact, I would say 3 hats. The first hat is, he is the advisor to the Education Equity Fund. The second hat, he is the chairman of the organizing committee of this international conference. So he is the one behind the scene, I would say the mastermind of this international conference. And the last hat that he's wearing is, he's the chairman of the Princess Mahachakri Award Foundation, a very distinguished award which is given to teachers in Southeast Asia, teachers who changed life of students all over in Southeast Asia. So please join me to give a big round of applause for Dr. Krishnapong Kiratikon. Dr. Krishnapong will share with us what would EEF or what would Education Equity Fund will respond, and what is EEF hope, and how will EEF engage in what has come out from this international conference on equitable education and all for education. The floor is yours, Dr. Kisanapong.
Sawasdee krab. It is a predicament to be the last speaker. The easiest thing is that you say you agree with what has been said by the previous speakers.
Intention.
The second thing, which is more difficult, is to speak something new. That is, first of all, I have to thank our partners, Unicef, UNESCO, Save the Children, and the technical people who make this conference, I think I'm qualified to say, successful in my view. I think on the essential part, education for all and all for education, or in Thai การศึกษาเพื่อปวงชนและปวงชนเพื่อการศึกษา These are the main focus of this international conference on equitable education. As has been said that we have educators and think tanks from around the world, I think at least 60 countries, about 60 resource persons. They have come together in this international conference with an attempt to tell us about their solutions, their ideas how to solve new problems to this unfinished, I think it will be forever unfinished agenda of education for all. We have come to share experiences, to learn from each other, to inspire each other, to help each other, to reach out what seemed to be the unreachable, especially in the challenging time of the COVID-19, as has been echoed by Kun Shigeru and Kun Thomas. We have problems before COVID-19, and we will have more problems and new challenging problems after COVID-19. I think we discussed issues that we believed are game changers for equitable education. Again, this was emphasized by Kunduriya, by UNESCO, by Unicef. The area-based approach, data technology, innovative financing, public-private partnership. I think in addition to these four areas, we also discussed cross-cutting issues that are important, things like legal framework, decentralization, supporting mechanisms of teachers, data information. I think we agree that looking at these issues would enable us to pursue equitable education. To make this vision of equitable education possible, all parties must come together as one. All means government, civil society, international organizations, NGOs, teachers, communities, families, and students. I talked to Kun Prasan yesterday and Dr. Supakon that all doesn't mean all ministries in Thailand. We need more than all ministries. We need everybody in Thailand. All parties should work together to make education accessible to children anywhere, anytime. The technology allows us to study and to work anywhere and anytime. We should use this technology to make equitable education anywhere, anytime. I think children shouldn't have to make effort to find education at institutions by themselves. I think we should join hands to make education available regardless of the children's problems, needs, living environment, and social environments. Whereas the mainstream approach is to bring children to education, to bring education to schools. Let us turn the table around. Let us all bring education to children. This is a new paradigm. With this, I think we can reduce inequity. I think Kun Thomas put it very well that inequity is not inevitable. We must make equity evitable. Inequity is not evitable. We must make equity evitable. Inequity, as Kun Thomas mentioned, it can arise as an act of nature, but it is more of an act of policy, an act of choice. So we have to change the policy and we have to change the choice. We are part of a global community. We are here at this conference because we share common curiosity, common passion, common interest, how to make all for education possible. We have common goal. We want to deliver equitable education to all. Being a witness to this conference, just for the record, we have registered at peak over 8,000 participants from 7 countries. I think to me it's how amazing and comforting that we have this quantum of people sharing the common curiosity, interest, goal, passion. The next question is how to concretize and mobilize this potential we have witnessed into action. Kundraya, UNESCO, and UNICEF has to offer some ideas how we should move forward. Again, I'd like to emphasize what has been mentioned, that we need networks to move forward. Strategic network as well as what I call synergistic network. We need what I call synergism of networks, not addition of networks. Let's look at how we create this synergistic network, not just additive network. With this, or without this network, the practice will be the same, it will be more of the same, and all for education will lose momentum. As an initial step from this conference, I think the Equitable Education Foundation and the Princess Mahachakri Award Foundation are willing to serve as the building block for this international network of equitable focus education organizations together with our partners, namely UNESCO, UNICEF, Save the Children, and others. We would like to work together with our colleagues to make equitable education fully realized by 2030. With this network, as Kundraya reflects that, we build this collaborative network at synergistic network. We would have new friends, we would have new networks, we would have new ideas, and we have new actions. EAF would like to share experience at domestic level on developing what we may call Thailand National Alliance of Equitable Education. Last month, in June, EAF organized and bring together government ministries, provincial governments, local governments to share their practices in which how they promote equitable education in their context. It is a catalyst for provincial and local governments to work together. Witnessing this local conference, we see transformation of a gathering into a platform, a local platform, a national platform of inspiring, sharing, and learning, to name just a few. At this EEF local gathering, we drew over 500 participants from, I think, all the 77 provinces of Thailand. At this conference, we have reflections of interest and willingness to drive the All for Education forward. I think now we have a local platform that local stakeholders can work together. If this alliance is made possible in Thailand with like-minded people, we could make it possible in other countries. At the international level, EF organized 2 meetings, I think, in the last 6 months. I was fortunate to be participant in these 2 conferences. We brought together players in equitable education at international level, forming a network. This network will be a community of practitioners on equitable education. We foresee that EAF and the Princess Mahachakri Award Foundation would be one of the many bridges linking national alliances or national networks with international networks. I think from this two-day international conference, we learned that COVID-19 maybe is a blessing in disguise. It makes equitable education more challenging. It brings us together. It brings us closer. We can see from this 2 days of blended online conference with this 21st century technology, with commitment to children and with passion for education for all. This basically could prevail over COVID-19. This shows that network and partnership are the key to help us overcome the last mile challenges. The synergy within and among networks will help us attain the Sustainable Development Goal of equitable and quality education for all by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, the word all for education is not just a summative, as I said, of all parts, but a synergism of all parts. We look for synergistic network on top of additive networks. It is all of us who can help save and help bring quality education and quality of life to our children. It is all of us together to make the difference. It is the best gift of all that we can give to our children, to the future generations. Thank you very much. สวัสดีครับ
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Krishnapong. Your philosophical definition of all for education and education for all is very inspiring. And it helps summarize what we have been conducting during the last 2 days for this international conference, because this international conference is the theme for all for education. And what you said is, together we should come as one. So ladies and gentlemen, we are here today, and yesterday we all come together. These 4 organizing partners has come together as one, just like the music that started earlier when you hear Dr. Krishnapong walk to the stage. That was the music called We Are the World, We Are the Children, and we must come together as one. So let's give a big round of applause for our 4 representative panelists today.
We congratulate ourselves as well.
And thank you very much for all of you who listen or are joining in with us at home. So one for all and all for one for equitable education, all for education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again to all of our distinguished speakers and our moderators for our last sessions of the two-day international conference here, the Equitable Education, and of course, All for Education. So these are the songs, and I think most of us here know this song. And it really goes with our theme here, All for Education. And we need to do this together. One cannot make it happen. We need all of us, and we need all of your help together, everyone here. So I say that this is the final for our two-day international conference, and it's been a great moment for all of us coming up on an online conference, sharing knowledge, information, and variety of topics and sessions that are very interesting. So just to remind everyone that you can use your usernames and password to log on to the website, and we'll have the video uploads on the website itself. And just don't forget that from the emails that everyone has registered, we'll be sending a survey form. So we love to hear from you. Just take a few minutes to fill out the survey form and send it back to us to improve in our next conference. And don't forget that on our website itself, we have the virtual exhibitions and many more to come in the future. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, all of moderators, and everyone that are watching from our online conference here. We love to hear from everyone. We love to see some changes happen in the future. And thank you very much for your cooperation and your interest for being with us in these full 2 days. And this is the final for me as well, Sarita Chu Si, as your host. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, all participants that are watching. Have a wonderful evening and see you in the future. สวัสดีค่ะ